I said, oh, yeah, I'm a Christian, and let me show you my tarot cards.
Hey everybody, your buddy Basil here, and you are listening to the Joyspiracy Theory. We are back in action, everybody, and this week we've got an awesome conversation with Gary. Now, you may remember a while back, a couple months ago, Gary was on Canary Cry Radio with his partner Doug Woodward there, and we talked about their new book, The Revealing. And it wasn't very long after that Gary jumped on and recorded a session with me here. We talk about his life, and we dip a little bit into the book, but more, Gary tells us about just a really interesting life filled with all sorts of twists and turns. We get to hear a lot about his journey with music, but also some very interesting experiences with, maybe some not-so-Christian activities. I mean, there's some levitation in there, there's some UFOs, there's maybe some tarot cards, stuff like that. So, the usual stuff around here, but I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. But before we get into that, just want to remind everybody you can head over to patreon.com/TJT to support the show. We do not sell ads. We don't sell your attention for our own personal gain around here. So if you like the show, if you want to keep it going, you can head over to patreon.com/the Joyspiracy Theory and support the show there. We got some rewards, and with a lot of the Patreon stuff going on, we're going to be revamping some of that. So get in there now and keep an eye out for some fun rewards. Other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot going on right now. I've got some episodes in the can getting ready to come out over the next few weeks, so keep an eye out. Also, if you want to come on the show, go ahead and send an email to me at basil.rosewater@gmail.com. That's basil.rosewater@gmail.com. And we'll get you on the show. Gonna be doing some scheduling here, some recording, so we can get some more episodes out. So, other than that, I'll see you guys at the end of the episode. We'll talk about leaving ratings and reviews at that time. But for now, again, this is Gary, and I think you guys are going to like this. Make sure to check out his book with Doug Woodward, The Revealing. But don't do it quite yet, because you got to listen to this. Okay, here we go.
Hello, Basil.
Hey, Gary. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing swell as ever.
Okay, well, I'm very glad to hear that. Glad to have it on the show, and thanks for making yourself available.
Well, thanks. Thank you for inviting me.
You betcha. So, for those who, I'm sure many people will recognize your voice from the recent Canary Cry radio episode, but you are Gary Huffman.
I am.
Okay. You haven't changed. I love it. Nope. Never change, Gary. Never change.
Trying not to. Well, in some ways.
Well, before we get too far into the episode here, what I like to do at the beginning is I like to ask the guest what they're grateful for at this moment.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, let's see. I'm always, at this moment, I want to say I'm always.
I know. Well, let me, just to take the pressure off for you.
Oh, go ahead.
We're always grateful for Jesus. We're always grateful for our family. Those are, and this is a no pressure question. And that's why I like to add right now, because sometimes, something happened today or even right before the recording that we get to just call out and be grateful for together.
I can't think of anything that really stands out today.
No, come on, buddy. You got it. You can't be the first guy to not have an answer.
I know it's horrible. Because I mean, I'm grateful for a lot of things, but what today?
You got this.
Well,
I believe in you.
yeah, boy,
It's a
you're
it's a harder question than people would
it
think.
is. Well, I mean, a lot of people kind of are thinking of things all the time. Right now, I'm grateful for being alive.
There you go.
I'm grateful for what God is doing in my life. I have, no miracles to report today, and things have been somewhat stressful at work sometimes, and I think the Lord is helping some of that. So let me put
Okay.
for being grateful.
Well, there you go. There you go. Loving it. So, Gary, I know you haven't spent a whole lot of time with this show, which is actually a little bit of an unusual thing for me, which I'm actually kind of excited about.
Hmm.
Most of the time when I bring people on, yeah, they're specifically listeners and fans of the show. But what I'm hoping to do is to create a listener and a fan of the show during this conversation. So
Yeah,
you'll hear me earnestly trying to win you over. And I know that there's lots of listeners rooting me on. So
I don't think that'll be hard.
So just to give the listeners an idea, where do you come from and where are you now?
Okay,
Geographically.
right. I am very close to where I come from. I was born in historic Fort Benton, Montana. If you read anything about Lewis and Clark, that's on the list of where places.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I grew up in a little town between between Fort Benton and Great Falls, little town of Highwood. Something like 450, 500 people in the area
Okay.
on a farm.
What state is this now? Because I'm
Oh,
famously bad at geography.
did I just say Fort Benton and didn't say Fort Benton, Montana? Okay.
Montana. Okay, a
Uh,
Montana boy.
yeah, that's right.
Very
So Highwood,
cool.
Montana is where I grew up. Went to high school there, school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now living in Great Falls, Montana, which is about 40 miles west of Highwood.
Okay. So I'm sure we've got some Montana listeners who know exactly what you're talking about. But I do know the general shape of Montana. So that's about as much as I get there, but I'm loving it. What was it? So tell me a little bit about growing up in Montana. What was your family like? What was it? Did you fight any wild animals while you were a child?
Let's see. Well, I had a sister, a couple years younger than me, and still have a sister.
Hmm.
And we had, let's see, we had some milk cows, we had chickens, we had pigs, off and on these different things. A couple farm dogs. Um, Growing up when I was a little older, and when working wrangling animals. When I was working in harvest, I killed a few rattlesnakes.
Oh, there you go. So
Bare hands.
so what you're saying is you're a hero,
Oh, absolutely.
and they
Yeah.
they sing the praises of your exploits in
Yeah.
Montana for generations to come.
Yes, I put down the serpent.
So I kind of said it jokingly, but you grew up on a farm, so you did kind of get your hands on some livestock once in a while, huh?
Well, that is true. When I was younger, I remember when my dad and my grandpa and grandma both lived on the farm also,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember them squirting milk from the cow as they were milking the cow straight into my mouth. A lot of a lot of people wouldn't think that very appetizing, but it was kind of fun at the time. I never actually we got rid of milk cows before I got old enough to start milking, so I never actually did that myself.
Okay, so you got the milk for free and didn't have to marry the cow.
That's
That
right.
was convenient. You got
We
the
also,
got the goods and didn't have to do the work.
yeah, yeah. We also learned how to churn our own butter. I feel like I'm talking about a pioneer, but I'm really that was
No, this is awesome. I mean,
it was fun.
so this is fun because I'll get to share a little bit about myself. Where with a lot of the other guests, I mean, they've heard everything I have to say. But
Yeah.
I was a California boy. I did not get near milking cows or anything like that so much when I was a kid. I spent a little bit of time, probably more time than the average American, around miniature horses. But
Oh,
but I did not milk any cows. So you kind of were living that pioneer life, it sounds like.
yeah, that's true.
When now was this by choice? Were your mother and father, were they into it? Was that some were they living the dream on their farm?
Well, I think so. I mean, I'm sure with anything, you sometimes you wish you were doing something else.
Sure.
Uh, but yeah, that's what they wanted to do, and they were enjoying it, and we were enjoying growing up there too. Um, I do remember every once in a while we'd have a harvest hailed out, and I'm sure my dad was thinking during those times that yeah, we should be doing something else. But
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about your dad.
okay, um, so he was actually in the Air Force for a while, and then he went to school for diesel mechanic, and then he just decided to come back and help my grandpa with the farm instead of doing those things. Um, and let's see.
I mean, you were on a farm. I'm
Yeah.
sure when your dad, I'm sure he was putting you to work from
Well,
as young as he possibly could get away with without having child protective services being called.
oh yeah, yeah. That's the way things went. All right. And also, well, let's see. I learned to, it was easier to learn to drive on a farm,
Hmm.
and so I learned to drive I don't remember the year exactly, probably in 1952 or three Chevy pickup,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
and driving down the lane to get the cows. So my dad taught me to drive out there on the farm, and you didn't have to worry about uh, running through a stoplight or something like that. So yeah, so the sooner I learn to drive, the sooner I can work in the field on a tractor and driving truck for harvest or whatever. So
That's fun.
yeah,
And so your dad really did, that's the thing about being on a farm. I feel like you get to do a lot of those fun skills beforehand and then you get put to work.
right. And you're right there working with your dad instead of him being off to work somewhere and you're just at home. So
Yeah, there you go. Did you get along with him?
yeah, we got along very well till I turned teenager years, and then we had our differences just because how teenagers are.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll blame mostly on myself.
So you got a little wild in teenage years, huh?
I didn't really get very wild, but we had a few arguments, but nothing bad. I mean, we got along great, really.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. How about your mom? What was she like?
My mom was a very hard worker also, and she loved to cook. She did lots of cooking, helped the house look lovely out there on the farm, keeping the dust down. Let's see. Oh, she loved to work out in the yard too. I mean, we had a huge garden, which of course I was conscripted into working on that also.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, we would have a giant corn patch and other vegetables that needed to be weeded, and so I was a good good one to use the hoe out there in the middle of the patch. But yeah, my mom was great. We got along very well too.
Okay, so this sounds like kind of an idyllic childhood. I'm into it.
Uh, yeah, now that you mention it, it was pretty darn good.
Hey, life on the
Um,
farm, man. I gotta give that a try.
yeah, you should. Uh, yeah, I would love to live on a farm right now, actually, but that's probably not in the cards if you believe in cards. Um, but yeah, I think living on a farm and growing up where I grew up in a little tiny town was really a good place to grow up, a good place to raise kids.
Yeah, that's great.
I
Now,
remember I remember running around on the farm in my Robin Hood getup, and being able to shoot my bow and arrow and climb the trees and everything, and
oh
you could
my
just do
gosh.
that, and shoot your
Yeah.
bead without worrying about who you're hitting or whatever.
Oh yeah, that sounds like the life, man. If I could have shot my BB gun as a kid without getting yelled at, oh, if I could go back in time.
hmm
So that's awesome. Do you have brothers or sisters?
Yeah, just one sister, and she
One
lives
sister.
not very far away. She's outside of Great Falls, but
Is she
not
older or younger? Where is she in relation?
she's younger.
Little baby sister out on the farm. Okay.
Yeah.
You must have had a protective sort of streak with her, huh?
Uh, well, I'd like to say yes. And
This is a safe place, Gary. You can
yeah,
tell
my,
us.
my sister will be listening. No, I remember we got along great until we became teenagers again. And
Oh, I can't wait to talk
I
more
think
about your teenager
that
days.
teenagers, yeah. Well, we still got along fine, but I just remember, having little spats here and there, but we got along great.
Okay, well, good. Now, here's a question. Were you a church going family, or did that come later?
We were in the little town of Highwood. We had a little, and when I say little, these little, the Catholic Church was a little square white box,
Yeah.
really. And I mean, it seemed awful small to me. It's not there anymore, so I can't look at it and see how it looks today. But even when I was young, it seemed small. And then we had the Methodist Church in the same in Highwood, and that was maybe a little bit bigger building, but not a lot of people. But so our family went to the Methodist Church, and it was actually a pretty good place to grow up as far as church went too. We had during most of the time I was in church there and growing up in school. We had a pastor, and I'm just going to say his name. Maybe he'll listen to this someday. And well, this actually goes to something else later, which we may talk about. Probably will. But his name was Jim Beadle, and his wife Jim and Marg Beadle. And what happened was somewhere along the line, they had gone off to some prayer group or Bible study or something, and came back filled with the Holy Spirit.
Oh.
And that didn't always happen in the Methodist Church, and sometimes that causes some serious problems. But anyway, they brought that back, and Bible studies and prayer groups started up, and so it was really a good time to be there and to start learning about that. Yeah, so it took me a while before I actually gave my heart to Jesus, but all of that was very good influence on me.
Yeah, so you were kind of going to just the little town church. Was it kind of one of those situations? Because that's just that's what you do when you live on a farm in Montana. There's not a lot of other places to get out, so you head over to the church, or was it something more than that?
Well, I think that's true for a lot of people, and it may have even been true for us for a while. But then, um, I don't really know when my parents accepted the Lord for sure. But I know that all of us were going to church before we actually were born again. For probably for quite a while.
Oh yeah.
But we all during that time, somewhere during that time before we left Highwood, I believe all of us were born again, and somewhere in there we also got baptized in the Holy Spirit too. So that was part of the deal.
Okay.
And I mean, there was a Catholic church, there was a bar, there was a few other alternatives, but Boy Scouts, but.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, what's a kid to do in a situation like that when you do start getting into your teenage years?
Right. Yeah. So I was in Boy Scouts, and I didn't go quite as far as Eagle, but I learned a lot of good stuff there. Did a lot of fun camping trips. Learned how to tie some knots. Build a fire with a couple sticks. Let's see, what else did we do? Oh, well, in the little town of Highwood, we had a school. Let's see, we had, when I was there, we had, I think, about 50 in the high school. So
wow, the whole high school, 50 kids.
Yeah. And in our class, we had 16, our graduating class. There was a class a couple years ahead of us that only had 4, I believe. So, just depended on the year.
Wow.
But in there, we didn't have a football program during the time I was there. We did before and after, but during the time I was there, we did not have football. We did have basketball, and pretty much everybody played basketball, whether they could or not, So I did play. I was a very good bench warmer most of the time. And, I always thought that if I got to play more, I would be a lot better. But I wasn't one of those kind of guys that practiced basketball all summer long either. So.
Yeah, well, that'll do it, man. As someone who didn't join a lot of teams because I was busy warming my couch at home and not the bench.
Right.
Yeah, not practicing had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. So what I'm hearing is that not only was it a small town, small church, small everything, also small high school.
Yeah.
And so, when you got into your teenage years, I mean, it sounds like you didn't have a lot of opportunities to get into shenanigans.
Well, that's true. And for some reason, maybe because of my parents, I assume my parents' influence, but I wasn't a big drinker either, so that was something that some people were having fun with participating in, which sure. I wasn't. But one thing that helped keep me out of trouble also was, let me start with this. When I was 10, a kid in school came up behind me, and I'm not going to say his name because who knows, he may listen to this someday.
He probably does.
Yeah.
He's my biggest fan.
Right. Came up behind me at the drinking fountain and just grabbed onto my neck, and squozed my neck quite for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And, kind of semi-choked me a little bit, and it was all in fun. I went home and I got laryngitis. I couldn't talk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I don't remember. I don't know how long that lasted, but I think maybe I didn't even go to school there for a few days because I couldn't talk. My dad felt sorry for me. He went to town and he got an acoustic guitar and brought it home. And so that was my first guitar. And so I took some lessons. My parents paid for lessons. We had to drive all the way into Great Falls for some lessons. And there was two of my best friends that started taking lessons,
Mm-hmm.
and we decided, hey, let's put a little band together. So one of them decided to play bass, and so me and the other guy played electric guitar, and then we found a guy to play drums. It was actually the older brother of one of the guys, and we put a little band together.
Oh,
And
good old-fashioned garage band.
absolutely, and this was one of the first in the area. We played, basically what is now classic rock and roll.
Yeah.
We played the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Yardbirds, stuff like that, and it was a lot of fun. We were called the Mad Hatters, and then that was the drummer's idea. And then when he went off to college, we decided, we want to name it something else. And a couple of us had read Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. And we thought, hey, that's a good name for a band. So we named our band Dandelion Wine.
Oh, okay. So now, I mean, in a small town like that, I could see how it'd be an interesting situation. You probably get a lot of attention for your band, but also not a lot of venues to start playing.
Well, that's true. You're not going to find them right there in Highwood that often. We played for some things in the gymnasium and whatever, but we ended up playing in some of the towns around, like Fort Bend, where I was born.
Yeah.
Geraldine, Belt, Montana, where I'm going to church now. So a lot of these little towns around would have us come and play, and it was a lot of fun.
Now, what was this? I mean, were you trying to be a musician? Was that your life goal? Did you know how life turns out? 1 second some kid is choking you while you're trying to drink at the drinking fountain, and the next thing you're trying to be a rock star. Is that kind of what it was like, or was this just something to pass the time?
It was just something I think all of us really enjoyed. I don't really think any of us thought we were going to get famous or that we were going to make a living at it, to be honest with you. Yeah.
So you were realistic.
Yeah. Yes. I know a lot of people aren't, but although when I went to college, then I joined another band. Well, a couple of us kind of got together before we went off to college, and these were a couple different guys. We did the famous 3-piece band, like a Jimi Hendrix thing.
Sure.
And they were very serious about it. And we did get a booking agent, and he was going to send us on a tour and do all this kind of stuff. But things happened, and I really felt God had another plan besides that. So I kind of gave up that possibility of getting famous and touring or whatever, and did something else. So, yeah. I didn't make those two guys very happy either.
Well, that's a classic story. Now, you mentioned something about Mr. What was it? Jim Beadle?
Yeah.
You said he was involved in something a little later on. Now, I don't want to get past the point where that guy comes around. Whatever that was sounded interesting.
Well, it is interesting, but it goes on a different track. We
got no tracks around here. We're just kind of all over the place.
Okay. Yeah, we're just going around in the roundhouse.
Yeah.
So this is kind of, you talk about things that, what can teenagers do in a little town like this? Well, okay. So I got really interested in some things, and it was because of those dang Beatles, and it was the Beatles from England.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is why I mentioned Jim Beadle, because Jim Beadle was helping me get on a good track. Well, the Beatles, basically all of our band, fell in love with the Beatles.
Uh-huh.
We just thought they were the greatest, and we learned quite a few of their songs, and we did a pretty good job at it too. But what happened was, they went off to the Far East, and George was learning sitar from, let's see,
Ravi Shankar.
Yeah. Yes, Nora Jones's father, by the way.
Yeah.
And and I and also while they were doing that, they were also learning transcendental deep meditation from the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
Yeah.
And well, I thought what the Beatles were doing must be good, so I was going to do it too.
Yahoo.
Yeah. So I got very interested in that. I bought a book by the Maharishi Mahesh, and or Mahesh. I don't know which way you say it, but I like Mahesh today. Um, Bought a book, started learning how to do meditation. So anyway, basically that I'm crediting the Beatles. I'm blaming the Beatles for getting me into new agey kind of stuff.
Well, that's certainly, people have blamed it on less influential people, so that's totally fine with me.
Right. Yeah, and that reminds me. I saw, and I know you've interviewed L.A. Marzulli before.
Oh yeah.
I saw him at a conference, Chuck Missler conference, a few years ago, and we were talking, and I told him that I just told you. There's the Beatles that got me into it. And he said same exact thing happened to him.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean that was a cultural movement there.
Yeah.
So
And
you got into the types of stuff that the Beatles were doing. Was that mainly just as them because of a cultural influence, or were you kind of having a rebellious period there, as far as your church and family are concerned? What do you think drew you to that, or was it just the musician thing? You wanted to be like them?
Well, I think that I was interested in spiritual things,
Uh huh.
and and I wasn't getting guidance. I mean, I think people didn't know what to do with it, or my parents weren't sure about it, so they didn't really say anything. Um, but I'm quite sure I was interested in the spiritual aspect of it. I don't think I was doing it. None of the other guys. I don't even remember talking about it with the other guys in the band, that I was in.
Yeah.
I was just interested in it, and I don't. I think looking back, you'd say there probably had to be some sort of rebellion there, but I was just honestly thinking, and this is what I thought about a few other things, which I will tell you about here. I was honestly thinking, oh, anything. I mean, there's a typical New Age thought and statement. Anything that's spiritual has to have something to do with God. I just didn't know the other side yet,
Right.
And I didn't know the Bible well enough to know. So that's where I was at. So I was just experimenting, trying to find out, different spiritual practices. And yeah, I was also got a book on yoga and was trying yoga. And I know, now there's some really good information out there about Kundalini yoga and all of that. And that's creeping into the church all over the place.
That's right. Now, at the time, I mean, were you getting anywhere? Were you getting any results? Were you finding what you were looking for?
Well, I don't think it was terribly highly supernatural. I mean, it wasn't at the time in high school. I think I was feeling like there was some benefit to it, and I don't think I really got into it supernaturally as much as I did when I went to college, which, I actually, when I was in college, I was actually attempting to levitate, and I did.
Whoa.
And it scared the crap out of me.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, it was very short, and I got scared, and that was the end of it. It wasn't like
Okay, you
Putting
got to
out.
tell me
Oh,
what the process was, though. How is it that you're supposed to be able to levitate?
I don't even know if I remember. But I'm laying on the bed meditating,
Uh huh.
and I don't remember if there was something that I was supposed to do to levitate, or if I actually just did it without. I honestly don't know if I was trying to do it or not, but
Yeah, it just started happening.
yeah, and it did actually scare me, which is a very good thing, you know, because if I was really into it and started doing that all the time, then I would have gotten sucked in more, you
Yeah,
know.
well, that sounds like a pretty fun skill to have on a resume.
Oh yeah, yeah, but I haven't put it on my resume, so
Oh, well, okay.
I'll have to
Yeah,
remember.
because you gave it up, man. You gave it up
Yeah,
too soon.
yeah,
So you're
yeah. So
meditating and you felt what, your body weight kind of lift off the bed
mhm,
like that?
yeah, yes,
Yeah, that could be pretty spooky.
yeah, especially when I wasn't really expecting it. It just, you know. So yeah, it's like some people that you've probably interviewed, many people in the New Age thing have gotten way into lots of stuff, astral projection, all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't quite get that heavy into all of that, just enough to have God reach back down and say, hey, you need to change your direction. And it took me some convincing by people and by the Lord to get out of the things I was doing. I can tell you a couple more things I was doing if you're interested.
That's all I'm interested in.
Okay. Well, there's another thing that I'm sure was an influence. Well, growing up, there was a little book that must have been one of my aunts or uncles.
Okay.
Um, that was in a what we call it was one of the sheds on the farm, and it was kind of the place where a lot of stuff was stored. And there was this cute little book, paperback, just called Black Magic.
Oh, a little black magic book found in the old shed, huh?
Yes, and that was just out there the whole time I was growing up, and I never took it in the house. Never, I just always left it out there. But I was go out there and take a look at it once in a while, and it kind of scared me, but at the same time I was always intrigued by this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty tantalizing little treasure for a kid to just be sitting out in the shed.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a fun little kids book, it was serious.
No, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that kind of thing where, especially, growing up in the church where you're told, you don't, if you find, I think my pastor specifically said, if you find a little black book that says black magic on it,
yeah,
tell an adult.
right.
But you must
I
have missed that message, huh?
I missed that message, totally missed it. Yeah. So yeah, and so there's another interesting thing that happened to me.
Wait, are
And
we moving away from the little black book?
well, yeah, I'm moving away from the black book because I
Wait,
don't.
did you ever pursue the little black book, or you did just leave it?
I don't believe I ever actually did any of the little
Mm.
incantations
Did you
or
flip through?
little.
Do you know what it was like?
I
What
I
was in
probably
there?
at every page in the book, and read a lot of it. But there was some, it's one of those things is intriguing, but kind of scared me a little bit too. But um, I don't know if I ever really thought of it as being, unbiblical, so to speak.
Oh, interesting.
So I didn't really even get that picture at that point in time. Um, yeah, so moving away from the black magic book, I just had to throw that in because those kind of things influence people in their
Yeah,
growth.
those little influences.
Yeah, because you think, well, somebody must have thought this was worthwhile. They ordered it off of the Wheaties box or whatever, and so you think, well, I should take a look too. Anyhow, when I believe this was summer of '68 or '69, and I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
But um, we were custom cutting for my friend's dad, cutting their grain for them, helping them out.
Yeah, of course.
And
Normal stuff that kids
yeah,
do.
normal stuff out on the farm.
Hmm.
And so I was driving from our house over to there where we were cutting the grain, and I'm on a dirt road and going up a little hill, and I see, now this is something that influenced me greatly, but I did not realize what an influence it had on me. I see above the hill as I'm starting to drive up the hill.
Hmm.
Guess what I saw up there?
I couldn't even begin.
Okay. Well, it was a UFO.
Oh, okay. Now we're talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that right above the hill. And I would say, as big as a big trailer,
What
at
it?
least.
Oh, big trailer. Okay, so you got
Yeah.
this wasn't just like some twinkle in the sky.
No, this was black against this was in the broad daylight, black against the sky. And
And it was flying.
I would say saucer shaped, but it's from the edge, looking at it from the edge.
Yeah.
And it was just hovering above the hill. So I look at that thing and I think I got to see that closer, So I drive a little bit faster going up the hill, and I had several turns to make, going up this dirt road.
Yeah.
And as I'm driving up there, then it just very slowly, kind of hovering, but slowly moves over the hill so you can't see it anymore. So I drive up to the top of the hill, get out of my car, and had to jump a little fence there. And I see it.
Yeah, you're going for it.
Yeah, I just, yeah.
Breaking rules.
I was not scared of it for some reason. I just thought I must be seeing this for a reason,
Yeah.
So I'm seeing it. It's down in a little valley, just slowly moving towards Great Falls, where I live now, and just slowly, just very, very slowly hovering and moving towards Great Falls. So I just watched it till I couldn't see it anymore, and I got in my car and I went to work, and I did not say anything to anyone. And I find this is very common with people who see these things, usually, especially at the first few times, maybe, or have any kind of contact or whatever. So it was just a couple days later that went to, we were harvesting again, the same place, and it was dusk, and we were, I was unloading the last truckload of grain, and so it's really loud. You have this auger going, making lots of noise, and it's very loud. My dad and my grandpa were both there, and I see in the distance towards Great Falls another UFO.
Another one. And
another one.
Only a couple days later, 2 UFOs.
Only a couple days later.
Wow.
Yeah. So I see that in farther away in a distance, maybe a few miles away, and it had like a searchlight on it that was kind of shining around on the ground. I mean, it would kind of point towards us, but also down on the ground. A very, very bright, like lightning bright searchlight.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how that ended, to be honest with you, but watched it for a while. And then I don't know, I never knew if I never talked to my grandpa or my dad about it. I never knew if they saw it. I don't think they did. I think it was only me, and I just want to say I think it was meant for me, so to speak, because all of this stuff was a seduction, and so those guys, whoever they are, they knew what to do to get me. And so anyway, I didn't say a word to my parents. I didn't say anything to anybody for years. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean,
that influenced me greatly.
I was wondering about that. I mean, you don't get to talk about it. You see 2 UFOs in just a couple days. I mean, how does that affect you?
Yeah, well, I think it opens your mind to a lot of different thinking, and also thinking, unless you understand the Bible and what that's all about. And, the Bible doesn't come right out and say, thou shalt not believe in UFOs,
Right.
or God did not send UFOs. There's nothing in there. So even if you do know the Bible well, and I mean, it would take some spiritual discernment to really know that this might be evil, possibly, And so I think, well, so since then, do you want me to go to the since then?
Yo, well, how far up does the since then go?
Well, it's related.
Okay, let's bring us there, man.
Yeah. So
we're on this journey together.
Yeah. All right. Well, so what happened was I don't honestly remember thinking a lot about it after that, but I just know it just sits in your mind and in your subconscious, and
your paradigm has been shifted.
There you go. And I was challenged by someone who said, well, I was on my way out the door to go see Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And it is the third kind, right?
Yes, sir.
And somebody said, well, you Christians think that anything you don't understand is from the devil, and making fun of that idea.
Yeah.
So, I thought about that. I went and saw the movie, and it was quite interesting. And and I thought about that. It was really a challenge, to me. And so after that, I went to the library, got a couple books that I could find, secular books on the subject. And then I also went to the Christian bookstore. And that was in the day when Christian bookstores had stuff that was really relevant and had decent Bibles and all that kind of stuff. It's hard to find one like that now. Mostly merchandise. But I digress. So, I got this book by Jacques Vallée, who was, one of the big guys in UFO research. I think he worked for NASA for a while. He was a scientist, and I believe, as I understand it, he was the guy, or at least one of the guys depicted in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the French-speaking scientist or something, or consultant. But anyway, so I read this book by Jacques Vallée, and he basically came to the conclusion as a non-Christian that UFOs had some purpose, and it was not benevolent, and that they were here to change the worldview of mankind.
Interesting.
He said that they actually have a pattern which is similar to what psychologists use to change in behavior modification. They use a pattern in what they call UFO flaps, when you see a bunch of them and you don't see them and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They use a pattern that's very similar, and it has to do with changing man's worldview.
Really?
So, yeah.
I have not heard of this.
All of mankind. I mean, not just one person, but, all of mankind. Yeah. And the name of that book, which I went out and bought it again a few years ago and read it again, was called The Invisible College. And I think that's why he called it that, is because they're basically attempting, they're using this so-called extraterrestrial UFO paradigm to change what humanity thinks. And of course, if you read just about anybody's information when they actually have contact, and they're spoken to somehow, there's always something about Jesus in there and how he isn't really the Son of God, So it's obviously that also corroborates that, idea that they are here to change our thinking
Yeah, for sure.
about who God is and, you know, what life is all about. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm flashing back to, your experiences there and how much of a paradigm shift it is to see a UFO. Now,
Yeah.
at that time, what was your current, state with the Lord? And then, can you describe what that may have opened you up to afterwards? I mean, what kind of shift did you experience?
Well, you mean when I actually saw the UFOs?
Yeah, when you saw them.
Yeah. Well,
Did
and
that kind of line up with your from what you read in that book?
yes, because what was happening is, I think all the things that I was, in a sense, being led to, and this was because I was open to other things um, besides just the Bible and to, being led by the Holy Spirit.
Sure.
I thought it was all part of the same thing. That was even before I saw the UFOs, I was thinking all of this is part of God,
Yeah.
So so I believe that just the fact that I was open to those other things is the reason that I saw those UFOs.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was just a reinforcing all these other things I was already thinking. And
Interesting.
That's my view of that.
Did that kind of send you off on the path of kind of exploring those types of things?
Well, yes. I didn't really look into UFOs or anything after that. That just was in the back of my mind all the time.
Yeah.
But I go to college, and I've got a friend across the hall in the dorm where I'm staying, and he's a very nice guy. He's got a roommate that we all got along fairly well. Well, so he's into divination.
Oh.
And he's very into it, and he also was into Rosicrucianism, and then he also, when he graduated and went off to, I don't know what he did after that, but he must have gone to seminary because he ended up becoming an Episcopal priest. But for me, he taught me how to read tarot cards.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I was very interested in the I Ching also, which is another type Chinese divination. I believe it has something to do with sticks and a book. But that seemed too complicated for me. I love the look of tarot cards, they're very artistic. I kind of have an artistic bent to me, so I thought, well, this is what I'm going to try. So he taught me how to do it, and I did it. And all this time, I still considered myself a Christian. I did not even think that it was incompatible.
Yeah, well, we've kind of seen a little bit of a resurgence in that same idea recently.
There you go.
The Christian Witches Association and all sorts of divination techniques kind of being mixed in with Christianity. Now, of course, people speculate that these people should know better, but if you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt, then who knows? Maybe they just really haven't read all the words and that they need to. Well,
most of those people are a lot older than I was back then.
Yeah.
And in my mind, should know better. They should be reading their Bible by now.
So interesting. So this guy was just into all sorts of divination techniques, and he just jumped right in. I mean, really, if you don't know any better, then why not? Sounds great.
Yeah. So I went out and bought my own deck of tarot cards, and I thought they were very pretty, and I learned how to read them. And I actually, I was in the little different rock band there in college, and I read them for some of those guys. And actually, there was a couple times when it scared everybody,
Ooh, tell me what you mean.
what it's coming up with, huh? Oh, well, the one thing I remember was something was for the drummer, and basically said he was going to be in some sort of a car accident or something.
Mm.
And so everybody was worried about that. And I believe something, I don't remember the details, but I believe something did happen to make everybody think, oh, yeah, these things are real, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah, you called it.
Yeah. So that was a little scary for everyone. And I just have to throw this in first before I tell you how God got me out of this stuff.
Yeah.
This is another part of the whole deal. There was the college where I was going. This was in Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a free university. They offered a bunch of free university classes, which were just, I don't know if colleges still do this or not, but they might call it something different or whatever. But what it might be some of the professors would offer, classes that were kind of extracurricular, so to speak, and they were just off hours, maybe at their home or a public place or whatever. And it wasn't necessarily professors. It could be just somebody from the community. Well, so there was this class in the Free University for witchcraft. And
interesting.
For some reason, I thought this was a good idea.
Well, you were into it, man.
Yeah, and I'm making myself sound really stupid, I realize, but it wasn't.
No, when you take a chance and listen to some episodes, this is a common theme.
Yeah, well, I was listening to your episode with Shiloh.
Oh, yeah.
That was quite.
That was a good one.
Yeah. So I'm taking this free university witchcraft class, and I believe a friend of mine took it with me, probably just because I was doing it. They thought, okay, yeah, I'll do it. It must be okay. And the name of the teacher, you have to hear this. The name of the teacher was Hester Duggleby.
Hester Duggleby. It does sound like a professor at Hogwarts.
It's Duggleby with a B.
Oh, Duggleby. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a perfect witch name, or let's say professor at Hogwarts. And that was her real name. Yeah. So, and, I can't ever forget that name. I don't have it written down anywhere, but I never forget that name. So, and her main thing was teaching us better how to read tarot cards. I think she taught us a few other things, but that was
in a university class. That is so fascinating.
Well, and see, it wasn't really a university class. It was what they called free university, which, you may be paid. It was like off hours.
Uh-huh.
And it may have been in a university building, or it might have been at somebody's home or whatever.
Oh, sure.
But you paid just like $25 or something to take this class.
Got it.
So the teacher made a little bit of money. But, I mean, they might teach anything, like basket weaving or whatever, but this was the one I was interested in.
Of course.
So I got done with that, and for some reason I was very taken up with this whole tarot card thing, and and how it seemed to work. And so I started telling people about it. I told my best friend that was in the band in high school, told him about it. I told my dad about it, and I was kind of almost like evangelizing.
Evangelizing your tarot skills.
Right. Just telling, how cool this is, and it really works, and what do you think, And my friend, he says, Gary, and he had a very deep voice. He was very tall, 6'4", and Gary, I don't think you should be doing that. But It didn't really have a reason, but he said that, and so I thought about it because he said it, and I think my dad might have said it there to me also some other time, but what happened was this was when I was home, and I saw my parents and my friend, and then I went back to school, and I kept thinking about it, is this really bad or what? Should I be doing this? And I really didn't have anything to go by. And so a couple things happened. I was in my dorm room. I kind of got a little bit scared because of what they were saying, and I just put them away in my closet in my dorm, but I couldn't get rid of them. I wasn't convinced.
Sure.
So I think it was the navigators come by, knocking on the door and telling me about Jesus. And I said, oh, yeah, I'm a Christian, and let me show you my tarot cards.
They must have thought they must have thought you were just messing with them or something.
I know. Well, so I showed them to them, and they said, Gary, you shouldn't be doing this, And I don't remember if they read any verses out of the Bible at that point. But so all these things were kind of making me think harder about it. I went to go study at the sub, and it just kept bothering me. I just kept thinking about it over and over and over again. And so I'm sorry. The one more thing happened. My dad actually sent me a letter. And I never knew him to, quote a bunch of Bible verses or anything for, at any other time.
Yeah.
But he sent me this letter to my, to school. And he quoted, the verses in Deuteronomy about divination and about witches and, don't suffer a witch to live, and that sort of thing.
Sure.
He had all that in there. And basically, I don't think you should be doing this. And this is why. And, so that was probably the first time I actually saw it in the Bible. And so that really
good old dad got your back, man.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm up there studying, and I just can't think of anything else, but I got to do something with those cards. So I went back to my dorm room, got the cards out. Oh, I had bought this very nice oak. It was like a recipe box, to put them in, to store them in. It was so, I was taking care of them very nicely. So anyway, I get them out, and I decide I'm going to burn them right here and now in my dorm room. Probably not a good idea, but I did it. So I don't remember if I had a candle or if I just had matches, but I started burning them one at a time.
Oh, wow.
Putting them in my, metal garbage can, so that hopefully nothing would happen. No alarm went off.
Hoping not to set off an alarm.
Yeah.
What are you doing up here?
Yeah. So I burn them one at a time, and I swear
one at a time too. There's a lot of cards in a tarot deck.
I swear there were very strange, almost like screaming type noises coming out.
Oh my gosh!
I burnt them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been pretty spooky.
That was spooky, but I'm telling you, with every card I burnt, the freer I was getting.
Wow. So you were starting to approve of your own decision to burn your tarot cards, huh?
Oh yes, and I was. I forgot one more thing that influenced me.
Woo! Hit me with it.
Okay. Two things that happened. So this was probably after I got the letter from my dad. I don't remember if it was before or after. But I thought, I know these tarot cards work, so I'm just going to ask them. Right?
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, that seems like solid logic.
Yeah, solid. So, I know now that they lie. But but actually, God made them tell the truth this time. I asked the question, so is doing this and Christianity compatible? So I lay them out, and the answer is no. Somehow they had to tell me the truth.
Yeah.
Then I said, well, what's going to happen if I keep doing it anyway? And of course, there's the death card in the deck,
Yeah.
So I came out, and death was what it told me.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that scared me a little bit.
Yeah.
And I just decided, okay, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to ask God in a kind of a way that I don't recommend. It's kind of using the Bible for divination.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably done this before yourself. Or a lot of
we've all done that. When you get desperate enough.
Yeah. So I get my Bible out, and I basically ask the same question, should I keep doing this? What's going to happen? And I open the Bible up, and I can't tell. I'd have to look up these exact verses and tell you, but I open it up, and I put my finger on the verse in one of the Gospels where Jesus is talking about the parable of the sower.
Mm-hmm.
And the parable, and the part where it says, and the plant sprung up and was choked,
Yes.
And so I thought, well, that kind of seems like it's saying something. So I did it. I thought, okay, God, show me one more time. So I opened the Bible up and put my finger there, and I put my finger on the exact same verse in a different gospel.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what really made me say, okay, I need to do something about this. And then, but that was still after that I was up, studying, and when I finally decided I'm going to go do it. So, yeah, that's how God got me out of that stuff.
Hey, well, that's not a bad way to do it. I mean, seems like the cards themselves were telling you to get out of there. And then, thankfully...
Well, I doubt if they really wanted to, but I think God can make them do that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's interesting with things like tarot cards and stuff like that. One thing that I've heard pop up quite a few times, it was comparing it to casting lots. Because of course casting lots shows up in the Bible. A couple of the disciples did it. The apostles did it to choose between Matthias or what was his name? Barabbas? No, it wasn't Barabbas. Barsabbas.
Yeah, I think that might be right.
They were trying to replace Judas. And and you see this all the time, and I've heard people like, it's fine. The disciples did it, the apostles did it. But I have tried looking around to see exactly what the casting lots involved in, that sort of ancient Judeo tradition was. And I haven't gotten a straight answer, but I doubt it was tarot cards.
No, I don't think so. And I'm sure that they were doing it in faith that God was answering them.
Yeah, well, it was just kind of a Jewish tradition, if you can't make a decision, you let God do it.
Right.
And of course the discussion is, now the Spirit is here, we have the Holy Spirit and stuff, we don't need dice or whatever to determine God's will. But like we were mentioning, the Christian Witches Association, stuff like that, the mixing is really easy apparently.
Yeah.
But you got out of it, and so you were pretty into the tarot card thing. Did you feel directionless that now that you didn't have your cool magical powers to decide what to do?
No, I really, I felt like a kind of like I was being maybe a slave to something, and I was being freed, really.
Right.
And I started going to non-denominational church where they, preached the Bible very well, and so I got a lot of good Bible teaching, and so that was my road to really understanding what that stuff that I was into was all about. And, I somewhere along the line, I got a hold of, this was down the road a piece, so to speak.
Yeah, sure.
I understood. During that time, we didn't know what New Age meant or the New Age movement or anything like that, but got a hold of probably the first book was Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow by Constance Cumby. And it's still a very good book on the subject. And, I became kind of a crusader against New Age stuff.
Sure.
So much so that my kids, they still thought that I overemphasized, to them, it seemed like everything was New Age, to Dad. But to be honest with you, a lot of things are.
Yeah, well, that's the world that we live in now. That's a pretty popular, whether you just jump right in or just kind of mix it in with whatever else you're doing. Right. The New Age is quite prevalent nowadays. Some might even say we're in the New Age.
Right.
Yeah. So was that the end of it? Was that the end of all your interest in sort of that kind of stuff? Did you jump fully into sort of a Christian life? Or, this was in college, right, that you burned the cards?
Yeah. And actually I did, started, I was going to some other Christian group. I can't remember if it was Navigators or what it was now, but
right.
And a couple different churches where there were good teaching. And it was right about that time that I quit the band, the rock and roll band that I was in.
Yeah.
And then these guys, my friend from high school was in a Christian, they called it a Christian folk rock band out in Seattle.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and they came through Montana, and they said, Gary, how would you like to be our guitar player? So they had an acoustic guitar player, but they wanted an electric, so I just went off and joined the band. So we were traveling around telling people about the Lord, and we were really big on the baptism of the Holy Spirit. That was a big thing to us at the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was something that kind of cropped up a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And so that chased you down still later on.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, because, I knew that was real. I was just mixing it in with too many other things. So Holy Spirit probably didn't have much sway there. But once I got out of the other stuff, then I could let the Holy Spirit lead my life again.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, okay. So then you started playing in this Christian band. So musicianship has been a thing forever for you, it seems, and it all came out of that kid choking you at a water fountain, which I still think is funny.
Yeah,
certainly not funny. But
time, but
no. When you look back at life, the things that one thing led to another, So you joined that band. Are you a career musician? Have you been you said something, you went off and did something else besides being a musician.
Oh, what did I say?
Well, you said that you left the band, but now you got into this other band in Portland. So it seems like you just keep finding a way back to it, man.
Yeah. We were in that band. I was actually they had been going for a couple years, I think, before I joined, and I was really only in that band for probably a year and a half before we broke up, on good terms.
Good.
It wasn't one of those bad, nasty band breakups or anything.
Sure.
But it was, well, so here's something interesting.
Okay.
We would go, we were invited to churches, pretty much churches and schools, high schools.
Uh-huh.
We actually would go into high schools, and usually a school assembly, and it wasn't a mandatory school assembly, but whoever wanted to could, and usually most kids would, just to get out of class or whatever, you know.
Of course.
So we were preaching the gospel to all these public school children. You're not going to see that today.
No, I was going to say.
I mean, you'd probably get arrested or something. Something would happen.
Something, yeah.
So, yeah, we did that. And, you know, each one of us, I mean, we wouldn't all give our testimony, but, you know, all of us at one time or another would give our testimony. And then, and our songs were, a lot of our songs were not Christian songs. There wasn't a lot of Christian material at the time to use, you know. I wish we'd all been ready by Larry Norman. We did it. But a lot of times we used other, you know, secular songs and changed the words and used those. So the kids were familiar with them. Anyway, so then we were allowed, quite often, most of the time, we were allowed to go into classrooms then to answer questions. And that was crazy. And
specifically about what? God or Christianity?
Yes, the whole thing.
Interesting.
And kids could ask us about everything, and we told them about the baptism of the Holy Spirit. We told them about speaking in tongues, and some of us actually spoke in our language in front of the class, which I don't recommend.
That sounds like the most awkward possible thing you could do.
I know. I don't recommend that.
Oh my gosh.
But that is something we did. And because we just thought, you know, this is the most important thing. If you're not a Christian, you need to be one. And if you're a Christian, you need to be baptized in the Holy Spirit. So That's what we thought. That was our mindset at the time. So, yeah. And we didn't get kicked out of any schools. We had lots of letters of recommendation, and everybody loved us. So that was quite.
So you're like in full ministry mode there.
Yes, that was a full-time ministry for us.
Yeah. Did you like feel a call to that, or did you fall into that? How did exactly that work?
Well, really, I fell into it because they wanted somebody, and I thought, yeah, I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to quit this band and quit all this other new age stuff. Well, I had already quit for quite a while. Sure. And yeah, and it was very good for me, you know, just to concentrate on the ministry and and it's actually during that time when I started working on what I call my famous book, you know, that you guys interviewed us about.
Sure, and we're definitely going to talk more about that here in a little bit.
Yeah, that's when I started doing that study. So it was very good for me.
Oh, that's great. Now, yeah, so those who probably have listened to the Canary Cry radio episode that featured you there, you recently wrote a book with Doug Woodward, a good friend of the show there, Doug Woodward. I'm trying to see if I can get him on here too. And but you weren't. Did you set out to be an author of end time sort of situations, or how did that even happen?
No, I was not even thinking that I would ever be an author. I've never really thought of myself as a good writer, as any kind of an author.
Uh-huh.
And I'm really thinking now. I've got my one book published, and I don't have another book in me as far as I know. And besides, it took me over 40 years, and I don't have another 40 years in me either. But no, it was just something that, you know, I learned about on one of our trips that started me thinking about the subject, and I just felt I kept, you know, thinking this is really important, And I wasn't even thinking end times even, but I just thought this information is really important, and somebody needs to put this stuff down. And I just kept finding things to write down. So
Yeah.
it was a kind of an exciting process, really.
That's great. Now, how'd you hook up with Doug?
Well, I had, what I had for my book before I got together with Doug was something that I had published myself by simply printing it out from a computer and then making copies and then comb binding it. So that was my book until I met Doug.
Oh, wow.
I had taught Bible studies with it, and people had bought copies from me. But I had heard Doug when you and Gons had interviewed him a couple of times. And that's when I just decided I'm going to get a hold of him. And it was really, it was about something that he said, I think, either on one of your episodes or it was on his website. He was talking about the Great Tribulation.
Yeah.
And so I think he was tracking on something that I agreed with, and so I actually sent him my whole, what was my book at the time, a PDF, and I just told him to read this one little section about the Great Tribulation, and so he read that, and then he started looking through it, and he said, hey, this is pretty good, maybe we should do something with this. And so that's kind of how it started.
That's very interesting. And then so you guys jumped in together. And for those who may not have heard, why don't you give us a little rundown of the book?
Okay. So the first thing that the first little thing that caught my attention when I was in the little folk rock band, and by the way, the band was called the New Men.
Oh, hey, there you go. There's a band name.
Shout out to all those new men out there still living. I think we're all still alive.
Nice.
Anyway, what I first learned about was how the feasts of Israel, the three main feasts, were a pattern. And a lot of people are talking about that and writing about it nowadays, that Feast of Passover was fulfilled in Jesus' death and resurrection.
Yeah.
The Feast of Pentecost was fulfilled at the day of Pentecost when the church was filled with the Holy Spirit. So the assumption was, okay, if the first two feasts are fulfilled, then the third feast, which is called the Feast of Tabernacles, which is made up of 3 parts, that should also be fulfilled. But it, as far as we can tell, it's never been fulfilled yet. Therefore, it's something in the future. So that's how it basically becomes eschatological, so to speak, and a pattern. And then I realized as I was going along that the tabernacle in the wilderness had the same pattern. And so I just began studying those, and then it led to lots of other interesting things and how the New Testament is full of the same stuff. Same patterns, really.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, and for a deeper dive into the book, I'll recommend everybody go listen to the Canary Cry radio episode with you and Doug, Gary Huffman and Doug Woodward. And it's called The Revealing. And it's very fascinating. And, especially now hearing your story here, that, it was not your plan to necessarily grow up to be a biblical author or an author of these sorts. It's fascinating. I mean, it's very in depth into some certainly not new ideas, but as far as how Christians imagine what the end times or even just the afterlife is like and what that entails. It's simply not as simple as we're sort of led to believe on Sunday morning.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. Well, it's very exciting. Well, I'm curious. Now, there has to be parts of your story in between the book and the new men, of which there are still some out there.
Yes.
Did you end up getting married, having kids? What's the deal, buddy? Give me the story.
Can I just say, most likely, all of those new men are old.
The new old men.
Yeah. Yes. So see, when did I get married? I got married probably only a year after I got out of the new men.
Uh-huh.
That was in 71. And I had a son and 3 daughters, and we were married for about 6.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And so things happened, so to speak. And my wife divorced me at the time. And so that was, that was a very hard time to go through.
Yeah, certainly.
But I really, I kept with wherever I was at, whether I was in, actually I was going to school in Missoula for a while at that point. And I always stuck with Christian people, a good church, and tried to keep on keeping on with the Lord no matter what. And so I ended up coming back to Great Falls. Well, I had never lived in Great Falls actually until this time. Came back to Great Falls. Well, actually, I did just a little bit after the new men. I got to correct myself there.
I know.
Come back to Great Falls and start going to church here at a church here in Great Falls. And, I started playing some music, mostly just myself. I don't know. I played a little bit in a band here and there, mostly with Christian guys. And I played some of my own music. I was starting to write songs and kind of a Bob Dylan style, I guess you could say. And we had a coffee house here in Great Falls for a while. I used to go down there and play and sing. And let's see, what else was I going to say? So a few years down the road, then I met my wife today, who is Paula.
Uh-huh.
And let's see. I was going to say something about that.
About your new wife, Paula?
Yeah, there's something that went through my mind, but anyway, so we got married and we kept a good relationship with all of my other kids, and we ended up having 3 more kids.
Oh, so, there you go.
I have 7 kids.
7?
7.
Nice.
Count them. 7. And and after this many years, I not only have 7 kids, but I also have 12 grandkids.
Oh yeah, keeping it going.
And 1 great grandkid.
Wow. Well, good for you, man. You really kept the party going there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the Lord has been great to us and our family and done many, we've had lots of little miraculous things happen here and there in the family. So, great to be living life with the Lord.
Well, that's good. Well, I'm loving that. So, coming through everything, and it seems like you came out okay.
Well, I think so, as okay as I can be.
I think you're selling yourself short a little bit there, pal.
The process of sanctification, like we talk about in the book, It's a lifelong process.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, here's the thing. You can't possibly be done with your musicianship. I mean, it seems like you couldn't stay out of a band if you tried.
Yeah, there was actually a while, and I don't know, somewhere along the line, I must have decided I'm making too much of God out of this music or something, or it's or music is of the devil. I don't remember what I was thinking, but or rock and roll music. But anyway, I stopped playing for quite a while, especially electric guitar.
Uh-huh.
Then, and I didn't even want to listen to the radio, rock and roll on the radio. There was a period of time when I went through that, and I think a lot of that was the 80s, and I never did like 80s music anyway, so 80s rock and roll. So I think I missed at the best time. But I was in a couple different Christian bands. We got together and did some stuff, and then I kept playing here and there at different coffee houses and whatever. And then every once in a while, somebody would, and I never thought my voice was a good voice to sing at a wedding, but every once in a while, somebody asked me, "Would you please sing at our wedding?" So I would do that. And I actually wrote a couple wedding songs.
Hey.
Hey, and I actually wrote a wedding song for my wife when we got married too. So
hey, there you go. See, you're getting all sorts of points.
Yeah. And but I played in worship bands, in every church I've been in, basically I played in worship bands, usually not leading the worship, but sometimes I actually led the worship, and usually playing electric guitar along with the rest of the band, and that's always been lots of fun. So, yeah.
Lots of fun. Okay. You ever cut any records?
No, I haven't. I've participated in a few recordings. I was in the last 10 years, I was in a couple bands where we just played kind of classic rock and roll,
Yeah.
Forgot to mention that. And one band was we had horns, we had a saxophone and a trumpet, a couple saxophones, a trumpet, I think. No, 2 trumpets and a saxophone. And that was really fun. Never been in a band like that before, so that was great. And then I was in another one up until a couple years ago, and I just decided it was time to do something else, and I knew something was brewing. I didn't realize it was publishing a book, but really it wasn't long after I left that band that we started working on our book. And so I really think that was part of why I ended up getting out of it, because that was taking up a lot of time. But recording, we did our own informal recording when I was in that last band.
Nice.
And then there's a few songs that I had sung and written many moon ago. A friend of mine said, "Hey, I have this guy who's got a recording set up, and really it wasn't very fancy. A couple microphones and a reel-to-reel recorder."
Reel-to-reel, nice.
Yeah. And so we did that, recorded whatever I had written up until that time. And that was fun. And actually, so I just had that on a reel-to-reel for how long? I'm going to say 85, 95, 10, probably 20 years or more, sitting there. And I finally, probably a year and a half ago, I had a guy digitize it, so I could make copies of it and everything. So that's the couple that I sent to you.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, I was hoping you bring those up, because at the end of the episode, I want to play a couple of those. And so out of the ones that you sent me, if I played 2, you sent me 3?
I think I just sent you 2.
Okay, I'm going to play those 2. Why don't you tell me about them?
You're going to play both of them?
Yeah, okay. Might as well. We'll get a whole playlist going at the end here.
Okay. Um, well, let's see. I really don't know which one I wrote first, but one of them is called Keep Looking Up, which comes from Luke. I probably can't tell you without looking at something what the exact verse is, but it's where Jesus said, when you see all these things come to pass, look up, for your redemption draws nigh. That's kind of King James-ish. So I wrote the song Keep Looking Up, and with harmonica and all, and I just basically, the idea of the song kind of the same as what Jesus was saying, but don't get all excited about all the stuff that's happening. Keep looking up. It's a reason to be excited, not fearful. So that's basically what the song's.
Yeah, amen, brother.
Mm-hmm. So that's my attitude towards this time that we're in right now. Keep looking up.
That's right. And what about the next one?
The next one is called There Is a Peace, and it basically comes from the verse that says there is a peace that passes all understanding, and that's what the song says.
Yeah.
And I just talk about different circumstances, where God can bring peace, and that's what it's about.
Okay.
God can bring peace in any circumstance.
There you go. Amen. Well, I listened to him and I was jamming out, and I think everybody else is going to think so too. So I'm looking forward to everybody hearing those. Now, here's the thing. Before I let you go, buddy, I do got to ask, well, I'm going to ask you for links and stuff so people could check out the book and that sort of thing. But also, I got to ask you, we're all about, keeping joyful in these times, keeping our spirits up and finding joy in the Lord and everything that brings us joy. And one of those things we like to talk about is our furry friends. You got any kitties or doggies or all even except lizards or tortoises?
Okay. Well, first of all, I know you like cats, right?
Oh, the love of cats is only because I've been infected with the parasite that infects our brains. Yeah.
Oh, is that what does it?
Yes, yeah. Yes.
Well, so when I was a kid, my grandma gave me a Siamese cat, and so that was my cat for quite a few years growing up. And I've never had a cat since. And it's not because I don't like cats, but I just haven't been married to somebody who likes cats. But we do have a dog, and he's getting pretty old now. He's a wire-haired fox terrier, and his name is Greg.
Greg, that's a great name for a dog.
Yes. And yeah, he's a fun dog. He's getting a little old.
Yeah, well, that'll happen. The slow march of time, but that's awesome. Greg sounds like a very friendly dog name.
Yeah, he's pretty friendly.
Well, good. All right, buddy. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you, Ben.
And I recommend people check out the book called The Revealing. Where can people check out the stuff that you do and find the book?
So, the book is on Amazon, and there's also a link on the website that I have created for the book. I need to do more work on this website, but quite a bit of the beginnings of the book is on there, so you can get a good flavor of what it's about. And it is the-revealing.com. Hyphen not spelled out.
That's right. Okay, the-revealing, the-revealing.com.
Yes.
Okay, very good. I recommend everybody go check it out. And you got any last words there, pal, before I let you go?
Well, let's see. My last words would be to, no matter what's happening out there, to keep looking up and then you can play the song.
There you go. All right, buddy. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Gary. And hey, you and I will keep in touch.
I appreciate that. I want to do that.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Take it easy.
God bless.
Bye. Well, there you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Gary H. And, as always, I certainly did. And, yeah, we recorded this one a while back, so some of the references to the timeline, our Earth timeline, might have been a little bit off. But I'm glad we were finally able to get this out. And Gary, so excited to play some of your songs here at the end of the episode, so everybody make sure to stick around for that. But before we get into that, I want to give everybody the opportunity. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, patreon.com/thejoyspiracy-theory. You can go, you can support the show, and that's how we can keep everything running, keep this engine moving, people. But if you are unable to give to the show financially, there's other stuff you can do. One of the great ways you can support the show is go to iTunes or whatever podcatcher you listen to on, and leave a rating and a review. A rating is stars, usually 1 to 5 stars, and you know how that works. 5 stars good, 1 star bad. And reviews are words. You use those words to tell people about the stars that you gave it. So if you enjoyed this episode or any of the episodes, you can head over there, leave a 5-star rating, and let everybody know that listening to the Joyspiracy Theory is like floating down a river full of cats and just getting cuddled all the way down. So that's a good way to do it. That helps spread the show. It tells the iTunes robots what's what. Also, if you got friends and family who aren't listening, another great way to support the show is just pick an episode, send it to them, text it to them, put it on Facebook, something like that. Really helps people discover what we got going on here. Other than that, I don't think there's too much. Like I mentioned, if you want to be on the show, take the opportunity to sit down with me for a couple hours and just chat it all out. You can send me an email at basil.rosewater@gmail.com. I'm super excited to get back to talking to folks, so send me an email again at basil.rosewater@gmail.com. Make sure to do that. You can also leave me a voicemail. Go to thejoyspiracytheory.com. There's a tab on the right. Go ahead and do it. Okay, I love you all.
There is a peace that passes understanding. It's not the peace that comes when your life goes smooth. It flows along your way down deep inside you. It keeps you cool when outside hell's breaking loose. There is a peace that the world cannot give you. Don't be fooled, you cannot get it there. Look away to the place where God is standing. Take his hand, you can't be moved there. Oh yes, I know that there is music. Oh yes, I know that there are friends. Oh yes, I know that there are houses. But these could all be gone when the song ends. There is a peace, I know that you will love it. Don't be afraid, you only stand to gain. Come on into the place where God Father, you can be His child. Oh yes, I know that there is beauty. Oh yes, I know that there is mirth. Oh yes, I know that there is feeling. These pleasures, they don't last long here on earth. There is a peace that passes understanding. It's not the peace that comes when your life goes smooth. It flows along a way down deep inside you. It keeps you cool when outside hell's breaking loose. Keep looking up.